Welcome to On Top of PR with Jason Mudd.
Hello and welcome to On Top of PR. This is Jason Mudd with Axia Public Relations. Today's a solo cast where it's just you and me, and we are talking about a different topic than we normally would. Today is Ask Me Anything, Students Edition. So I received a series of questions from students. Shout out to Fernandina Beach High School, my alma mater in Florida. They sent me a bunch of questions from their journalism class. And I'm here to answer those questions for them as promised. I was able to do a live presentation to them recently when I was at the school, becoming the newest class of inductees into the Fernandina Beach High School Hall of Fame. So while I had a great opportunity to meet with students and make a presentation to their class, and some of the questions that they had for me either after or that we didn't get to during that presentation. So I want to go through those here for them and hopefully for you, because I would like to see this be helpful to everyone as we try to give back to and advance the profession of public relations, which has been so good to me. And when I was even in high school, I knew I was interested in journalism. I didn't know I was interested in public relations and corporate communication. But at the end of the day, because of people giving back and helping me, including the couple of newspapers that I got to work at in real life while I was still in high school, and the Rotary Club for giving me a scholarship, and for ultimately, directly or indirectly, giving me my first PR opportunity, which I'll get to talk about here in just a minute. So with that, let me go through some of these questions, and thank you for tuning in. And if you found this episode helpful, please remember to share it with a friend or colleague that you think would benefit from it. The first question I received is, what would you say was your most significant success? Well, today, actually, November 18th, 2025, is the anniversary of when I first started Axia Public Relations. So I think that was my most significant success in general, just starting this business out in 2002 with literally just enough money to get some business cards, order internet service, and a couple of business telephone numbers at the den of the brand new house that we just moved into, using my employment as a vice president of communication and marketing as my, my income verification. And then also simultaneously, the day we were moving out of our old house into our new house is when we found out we were expecting our first child. So had to very quickly make the business work in order to pay that mortgage and allow my wife to be able to stay at home with our child, which was our aspirations. And so we were able to do that in starting a company from scratch. We survived. We started it during the dot-bomb recession. We grew it very quickly into the Great Recession and experienced many setbacks during the Great Recession because we had just invested about $250,000 back into our small business for all new equipment, doubled our leasing space, invested in training and adding new teammates, as well as completely redoing our entire network security and server configuration to make it ready for the next level and have the necessary protections and precautions and backups in place. We were also at the time expanding with new office locations, and so that was kind of a big deal. So anyway, I'm proud of the success we've had for Axia. Probably most importantly, the success we've had for the clients we've worked with and for the people that we've employed over the years, who some are still with us today and others have moved on to other opportunities. But almost every one of them is grateful for the experience they had with us, and many of them stay in touch with us today. And we're just grateful for that opportunity. To be honest, when I first started Axia, I didn't aspire to become an agency. I just wanted to be kind of a solo practitioner. But we got very busy very quick and started to grow. Next question is, what was the funnest PR you got to do? We have had a lot of fun doing public relations and helping companies along the way. We've had some trying and difficult and perhaps even tearful moments along the journey, but we've had some fun one as well. It's not really hard when you get to work with fun brands and do some fun activations and help companies through maybe difficult times and have them come out for the better at the other side of it. But some of the highlights, I would say, it's not hard to work for great companies like Dave & Buster's, Miller Lite, Southern Comfort. And it's also really fun to work with the right entrepreneurial organizations. We had a lot of fun growing Brightway Insurance from one location to hundreds of locations. We really enjoyed and appreciated the deep trust and long-term relationship we had with a company called MPS Group, who later became Adecco Group. Just good people there that we built lifelong client relationships with and friendships with. And I'm sure I'm forgetting several other things, but certainly doing work with family entertainment centers, which is one of our specialties, is always fun as well. I love trying out new products, and so that's fun to me as well. Also, the traveling. I've been able to go to basically all 50 states while working for Axia. I've been able to go to other countries and have really enjoyed that opportunity for certain. One thing about the profession of public relations, especially in the agency world, is you're always learning. You're always getting exposure to new ideas, new information. No 2 days are the same, and that's probably one of my favorite parts about this business. Also, I love and always have, and that's why I fell in love with journalism, is being in the know before everyone else, knowing what's going on in the world, and kind of being on the inside. That's something I also really enjoy. Let's see. What is your primary goal and aspiration for what you do? I got to be honest, it changes as I mature into this role and I gain more experience and insight, more wisdom. At this stage of my life, I'm starting to think about legacy. Integrity continues to become more and more important to me. I think when I first started this company, I started my career, I was extremely ambitious, and I was task focused and very driven and not necessarily people focused, which is kind of weird to be in the public relations business and to not be people focused. But I know a lot of very successful people who work in PR who are not people focused. And so for me, I've discovered that my niche is a problem solver. I can solve problems. I'm very resourceful. I'm very creative. I'm a great connector and, connecting people together and figuring out and leveraging those relationships. And that, in essence, is really what PR is. PR is not customer service, like maybe some people might perceive it as. So I would say that that's what I'm really good at, and that's what I really enjoy doing, is helping people and helping companies. And I do that through connecting them and solving their problems and often helping them communicate about them. But ultimately, my primary goal and aspiration for what I do is to have a great reputation of providing both valuable and helpful services that companies benefit from. Also having a reputation of integrity and doing things the right way. Having a reputation of giving back to the community and to the profession through my gifts and my blessings and my opportunities to serve. But right now, at the end of the day, what I'm looking at is growing my agency with integrity and reputation so that we can attract the best talent in the profession, as well as attract the best clients and do some of the best work. Next question is, tell me about someone who influenced you along your journey and what you learned from them. So, man, I've learned from so many good people. I've had great bosses over the years that I've learned, from them how to be a great boss, how to be a great leader, how to build culture. I've had other bosses who I've learned what not to do and how to ruin a company culture. And so I try to look at when I was young, especially, I used to look at every day and every interaction and reflect upon what went well, what could have done better, what did I learn, what am I going to do differently in the future? What are those that I was around them? What was it that, they did well and they did right and that I want to learn from? And what are the things they did not so well that I want to make sure that I don't do? So someone who influenced you along your journey, I had mentors early on, and I wish I would have leveraged more of that with them. But, along the way, I've just really, people have helped me. And so I'm trying to help others, which is part of the reason I do this podcast, a big reason I do this podcast. And a big reason why I'm doing this episode today is to help others as well. So, who's influenced me along the way? Different people at different times, mostly through reading. Mostly through consuming videos, going to workshops and things like that. There's a lot of people that have helped me. It just depends on the topic. I've learned from a lot of people. I've had to teach myself how to do business development or sales. I've learned from a lot of other PR professionals about certain skill sets and traits and capabilities. So there's a lot of people that have been influential to me. I'm always recommending books or referring people to people and influencers to other people that I connect with. So yeah, I just don't know that I've got a great answer for that. I mean, I think when I was in journalism, I read a lot, or I read about, Dan Rather and, Edward Murrow and other people like that, just trying to learn more about journalism. And through that experience, I got exposure to other things. So I've been helped by so many people along the way. It's hard for me just to say one person, but if you gave me a specific topic you're looking for help with, I would probably, be able to figure out who that best person would be. What are some of the hardest things you faced in your career? How'd you overcome them? Is the next question. I would clearly say that, it was just starting a business from scratch, not really knowing how to run a PR firm, having been focused on being on client side, getting frustrated with the poor quality of the agencies that I was working with who were over promising and under delivering, and yet growing significantly and getting a lot of awards for the work. And meanwhile, our best work was stuff we were doing in-house. And typically our in-house department was myself, maybe, one or two entry level or junior level people, and, or just an intern. And so when people start giving us compliments about the work that we were doing internally, or I was doing on my own, and wanting to know who our agency was so they could work with them, I got a lot of people saying, hey, if you ever start your own agency, I would love to be your first client. So I started my own agency, found out the day that we were officially launching the agency, that we were expecting our first child, and my wife and I were committed to allowing her to be able to stay home. That was something we wanted to do and she wanted to do. And so we were committed to that. So I had about 9 months to make this business turn into something that could replace both of our incomes. We had a brand new mortgage, a brand new baby on the way, and 0 of those people who told me they wanted to be my first clients came through. So that was definitely hard to get started from nothing and take that big risk and that big step. I was just telling a friend of mine who is starting a small business, and I said, look, you've got to do what 99% of the people are unwilling to do themselves. And that's hard by itself. The next hard things I had were, figuring out how to run a profitable agency. I didn't know much about agencies. I wasn't sure who my target audience was. I wasn't sure how to go about introducing my services and getting new clients. And then I had to figure out how to run a business, start having employees and overhead and, office space and expenses. It wasn't until the Great Recession hit that really I had to figure all that out pretty quickly. It started out, we opened our doors and we kind of fumbled our way into success and making money and growth. But then when the Great Recession hit, I really had to start acting more like a CEO and a business owner than a senior level public relations practitioner who had a team of people, kind of running it like a department, if you will. I had to start running it like a business. The Great Recession was very painful. I still have, emotional scars from that experience. We were growing very quickly, reinvested about $250,000 into our business for growth. And then that money kind of evaporated into overhead when, growth slowed. So I believe it was November of 2007 when 40% of our clients, meaning 40% of our adjusted gross income or the income at our agency that we manage to provide our services to the clients, disappeared in 30 days in that month of November, 2007. Oh, I'm sorry, September 2007. And I will never forget it. I didn't know what to do. These companies just disappeared. 40% of our income gone. And so had to make some very hard decisions and pivot, quickly, but honestly, not quickly enough. And I had to let go of some people that I really loved and people I really enjoyed working with and that, were very talented and that I had worked hard to recruit. develop, train, promote, and get them in the right spot culturally with our company, get them in the right spot for our clients, and then just had to let them go. And I didn't do it quick enough, to be honest. I dragged it out. I was hoping it would only last a couple months. And, by the time I got around to doing it, it had to be deep cuts and they had to be quick cuts. And some of those people were candidly very young families. They had, newborns at home. But ultimately, I've got a lot of advice from friends and mentors. And I realized that if I didn't make quick actions, I was going to put everybody, including our company, our other employees, and our clients at risk, because we were not going to be able to sustain the storm that was coming. So that's kind of how the hardest things I faced in my career and how I overcame them. There's probably countless others. I would just say a small business is very difficult. It's way more work than you think. It's way more stress than you think. There's a lot more risk and liabilities, but there's also a lot of rewards when it works out and it goes right. And I would just encourage you and everyone else to support your local small business and small businesses. If you're really a friend with somebody who owns a business, you would not ask for or accept any kind of discount. Instead, you would work with them to, help them grow their business and refer people, leave them online reviews, go out of your way to be their advocate and their support, because it is hard owning your own business. And, I admire those that do it, and I want to help them as much as I can. Tell me the coolest part of your job and why you think it would surprise people. Coolest part of my job is probably going to be just the insight and experience that you get, the exposure you get to so many companies, so many cultures, so many people, so many contacts, so many connections, so many ideas, products, services, and learning about them. I love learning. I'm a constant learner, constant student. I'm always reading something, watching something, listening to a podcast, going to workshops. I get excited about learning more and becoming better and becoming more knowledgeable. The other cool part about working in PR is you almost know things that people don't know yet that are exciting and interesting and newsworthy. That's the one thing that attracted me for sure to journalism is I love knowing things before everybody else did. I love storytelling. And when you're in PR, you often know things before even the news does. So that's probably one of the reasons I really like being in this business is I love being in journalism to know what was going on before anybody else did. But when you work in PR, you actually have an even earlier preview to that. The other thing I love about this job is that all the people you meet, all the places you get to go, and that's always been something I've really enjoyed. I've really enjoyed visiting new places, meeting new people, leveraging those relationships, helping people get connected and advancing what they're trying to do through the power of my network. And, not only knowing other people, but becoming known among them. And then I would say the other thing is that no 2 days are ever alike. I feel like at least at Axia, there's, every day is a little bit different. There's certainly highs and lows, but there's no 2 days feel the same to me, most days. And I've been owning this company for, 20 something years. Today is our anniversary. We started in 2002. So it's 2025 right now. So that tells you we've been around for 20 plus years. So, and there are days that I just get out of bed and I can't wait to do the work. And there are other days I wish I had a day off, but it just depends on what's going on. So I hope that's the coolest part of my job. There's great access in PR, there's great exposure, and all that good stuff. So what would surprise people is I think people are surprised by the people I know and the places I've been, is one way to look at it. And the opportunities I've had to just travel the entire country and even the globe to some extent in pursuit of the profession of and the advocacy of helping people with corporate communications and improving their thought leadership and their reputation and visibility. The next question is, tell me what advice you'd give to someone our age who is interested in public relations or owning their own business one day. So I've answered some of that already, but ultimately the advice I'd give someone your age is to think about everything long term. So whatever you're doing personally or professionally, think long term about it. Will your future self thank you for what you're doing today? Would your grandmother be proud of you for doing this, doing what you're doing? Will your children be proud of you for what you're doing? Because at the end of the day, your integrity is everything. Your reputation is everything. And I think that's so important. And companies hire us to fix their reputation, improve their reputation, or share their reputation. And at the end of the day, I think that's really important, regardless of what profession you pursue. And regardless of what profession you pursue, always be learning and improving. So improve your communication skills, both verbally and written, because at the end of the day, that will apply to any profession you're in. When I spoke to the students, I told them that everyone works in sales, whether you realize it or not. And the longer I'm in business, the more I realize it. So the engineers got to persuade you and assure you that the bridge they're building is going to be safe. The pilot has to assure you that they're going to have that they're a safe pilot. The salesperson is, persuading you that they've got the best product or service. The employee that's applying for a job is trying to persuade you to hire them and justify why you should hire them. But nobody likes to be sold. Of course, people like to be, informed and educated, maybe even entertained, to make an informed decision. So they like someone who can be a helpful guide to them. Let's see. Owning your own business. I said this earlier. It is way harder than you think. But it can also be way more rewarding than you might think. But there's definitely not instant gratification. You got to put the work in. You got to be willing to do what 99% of other people aren't willing to do. Most businesses fail within the first year, and only a small percent make it to year 3 to 5. And of even smaller, like single-digit percentage, typically make it to 10 years. And so it's really hard. And if you're going to do it, I would recommend don't do it alone. That doesn't necessarily mean to have partners, but maybe have some financial investors, maybe have a mentor, maybe you have a support group. I would definitely join a peer group. I would find an industry association and get entrenched to it, especially an industry association that supports business owners in that space. But yeah, those would be my quick high level hits of that. I would definitely find books and read a lot of books and learn as much as you can about business and about success and mindset and work ethic and all those things. Do you believe that public relations is essential not only in the business world, but also in everyday life? Yeah, of course. I mean, there's a cliche in business that is, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I would actually turn that around. It's not who you know, but who knows you. So for example, I might know of, Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or Warren Buffett or Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. But that doesn't do me any good to know of them. What would be good is if they knew of me or they knew me, right? Because people can only do business with people they've heard of, that they know, they like, and they trust, right? So if people don't know who I am, it doesn't matter that I know who they are. Although I would say you could probably try to leverage some of that to your advantage. But at the end of the day, I'd be much better off if, Mark Cuban knew who I was and thought highly of me and referred people to me than if I just knew who Mark Cuban was myself. Now, the way to turn that around is to get Mark's attention. And the way to get his attention is to refer people his way or, promote him on social media or something like that. And so there's ways that you can go about doing that. But yeah, I believe public relations is essential. And let me just be even more clear. Your integrity and reputation is essential to your success in life, in business, but also in your personal life. People want to do business with people they like, know, and trust. People don't want to spend time with people they don't like, know, and trust. And people want to certainly get married and start families and be around people that are enjoyable to be around with. So the next question is, what was one of the easiest brands to do PR for? That's a great question. Really good organizations that have a great culture, want to do the right thing for others, want to give back to the communities, remember where they came from, and support those that support them. So, I don't want to leave anybody out, but, we really enjoyed working with I mentioned earlier MPS Group and Adecco. We enjoyed working with Brightway Insurance. We enjoyed working with First Coast Community Bank. I remember when I first started my agency, I thought to myself, man, if I'm working with First Coast Community Bank in about 5 years, I would really think that I was successful. what I didn't know back then was I was just setting my bar and my success expectations way too low. They became a client within 6 months to a year of starting my company. And we ended up working with their parent company within 6 months to a year or so after that. And that was really, a highlight for me to be able to set a goal and just crush it in that way. And, at the end of the day, going back to the last question, the reason I got them as a client was because of my reputation and my integrity. So I was doing good work for other organizations. They saw that good work and they wanted to connect with me, and they gave me an opportunity to do some great work for them. And then upon doing great work for them, their sister companies or affiliate companies, I believe they called them, and their parent company expressed interest in working with us, and we got opportunities there. And, the greatest compliment for a small business is probably to get a referral. So if you know a small business, don't hesitate to leave them an online review or give them a referral, because that is the lifeblood of a small business. Other than that, it was really easy to do great PR work for a company that's entering a new market and creating jobs. I definitely loved working with Foundation Financial Group. They were a great company to work with, and gave us a great opportunity. They gave us really challenging work. They were growing really fast. They had some opportunities and challenges along the way that we were able to be very supportive of, and just love working for fast growth entrepreneurial type companies, that, want to do the right thing, actively give back to the community. And those are probably my favorite companies because the work is fun and it is enjoyable, and we get to do a lot of great work for them. And so, those are probably the easiest brands. What made you want to get into this field of work? Well, I started out in journalism. I wanted to be in journalism. I mentioned that earlier. My passion was, knowing what was going on and being able to tell other people about it, not in a gossip way, but like in an information delivery way, and just being kind of early in the know and be able to help people understand what was happening around them. This started at an early age, like a ridiculously early age. Probably, I think I was ballpark second grade when I started creating a little newsletter for my neighborhood, and more specifically, like the street that I lived on, and like the, 8 or 10 houses on the block, and just writing about what was going on. And I mean, very, very amateur. I mean, don't get me wrong, very amateur, but I knew that I was interested in this, and I can't really put a finger on why. I just knew that I was, and that's how I got in. That's how I started. And then I literally joined the newspaper staff and the yearbook staff. I remember in 6th grade, and middle school was a new thing. Everything was junior high, and now it became middle school. So it was 6th through 8th grade. And I wanted to be on the yearbook staff, and the yearbook staff teacher, Miss Long, who my wife and I now have a relationship with as adults, but she just had a rule, no, I'm not letting a 6th grader on the yearbook. But I was a little pest that wouldn't go away, and I just kept showing up. And, I think she saw what I could do, and she gave me an opportunity, and I loved every minute of it. And then as I advanced in my schooling, I stayed on the yearbook staff and the newspaper staff, and I just wrote and wrote and wrote. And then I had an opportunity to go work part-time for the Fernandina Beach News Leader. Started out as a production assistant doing darkroom technician work, and then kind of worked my way, weaseled my way, or whatever you want to use, into the newsroom to start writing. And so they give me writing and photography assignments. I was on call for photos and things like that, and did some sports things, and started just bugging the newsroom for assignments. And as long as I was keeping my work up in the darkroom as a technician there and a production assistant, and always just looking for more and more opportunities. And as I shared with the students at the high school, I was even cleaning toilets and taking out the trash. I mean, I wasn't too proud. I had a hustle. I needed the money, and turned into a great opportunity for me to get more exposure. And then what happened is, when I'm leading all this up to say that at some point I decided to go to the Missouri School of Journalism based on recommendations from colleagues at the Florida Times Union, who were kind of mentoring me and advising me and recommending it to me. And they said, look, if you're serious about journalism, you should go to the University of Missouri School of Journalism. So I figured that out, and I got there, and I graduated from there, and it's a tough program with a great reputation. And, there's a lot of tears involved, but I worked my way through it. But here's the trick. While I was there, I got a part-time job, and the part-time job turned out to be a student assistant was the job title. but they applied my work or my skills to work for them in a public relations capacity. And before I knew it, I was working in public relations and not even really knowing it or figuring it out and just dealing with it. It wasn't really what I wanted to do. But the more I started doing it, the more people started saying I was really good at it, and I started to really enjoy it. What happened, though, is the local Rotary Club asked me to go help a nonprofit tell their story. And I was, at the time, thinking I was a hardcore journalist. And I just said, no, thanks. I'm not really interested in that. Simultaneously, though, I am a college student. And they said, look, we'll pay you just to go out there and talk to them and tell us what you think. And the amount they offered me was $500. Well, $500 in 1994-ish was a lot of money to me and also to a college student. So I was like, sure, when do I need to be there, right? My attitude changed from I'm not interested in trying to distance myself, kind of not playing, but being hard to get because I just wasn't interested to, okay, I'll be there when, how soon? And $500 meant a lot to me back then. And, still a lot of money now even. And so, but that was a great experience because I discovered the ability to advocate for an organization and advance their message. And that's what really got me excited. And fast forward just a little bit later in that same year, I believe, or I know it was 1994, that this happened. And that was, I was on assignment in a newsroom and the editor said, well, you should go research that on the internet. And I said, okay, what's the internet? And he pointed me to either the newspaper librarian or research director. I'm not sure what her exact job title was. And literally this computer right here is connected to the internet. I'm like, okay, so what does that mean? And what do I do? So she showed me what to do. And I sat down and what felt like 5 minutes was probably 8 hours. 8 hours later, I stood up and I decided, okay, everybody's leaving. I should probably get out of here. But I couldn't stop thinking about the internet and the power that it had and talking to other people about it who had no idea what I was talking about and thought I had lost my mind and didn't understand what I was so excited about. But then in that moment, I realized there was a great opportunity. And that's when my career really started to pivot into PR because that's the only way I knew how to tell stories online was to be able to help companies tell their story. So that was 1994. And by 1995, complete strangers started recognizing me in a fast food drive-through and in a restaurant, and people would call and leave messages on my answering machine saying, I want to hire you to build a website for me and my company. And so literally as a college student, I started a side hustle of building websites for people. I called it JM Communication. And, a huge company actually hired me to start managing their website for them. And it turned into a business. That business turned into me joining a web development company and literally, joining it by leading it and turning it around from being a company that was losing money into a company that was making money. The PR I was doing simultaneously for this company ultimately attracted a company who acquired us. And I got promoted to basically running the entire company when it got acquired. And, I did that for a while and realized that I didn't want to really be in internet operations and the capacity that they were promoting me into and the direction they were promoting me into. So I eventually left, joined another company, and eventually left and started Axia. So that's how I got into this field. The next question is, how has public relations changed you as a person? Gosh, I've never really thought about that. I think it's all the things we talked about earlier. So it's given me an opportunity to travel, to meet people, to help people, to connect people, to learn from other people. And, honestly, it's been a very rewarding profession to me. Certainly I probably could have made more money in law or finance or something else. But this has been a great profession for me, and I've really enjoyed it. And I would encourage anybody who's interested in it to do it. I'll tell you, one of the most irreplaceable things that I have experienced is my newsroom experience has proven to be extremely valuable. So many people go into PR right away, and they've never worked in journalism before, and they don't know how journalism works. And I think what you can learn from journalism is not only just being entrenched in a newsroom environment, which honestly doesn't really exist in the same way it used to because of cuts, because of remote work and other things. But sitting in a newsroom and just seeing how vibrant it was to me in the, early 90s, created a expectation of how hard it is, to work in journalism, how demanding it is, and how hard it is to get your story told when you're working in PR. And so I'd encourage anybody at the student level and beyond to just start writing for a newspaper of some sort, even if you've got to start your own. But there's nothing better than, I think, learning from somebody else. Copy editors will kick your butt, but they'll teach you how to become a better writer. And you can apply those same skills to your oral communications, your verbal communications, and as time goes on, just improving your overall communication. So I hope that was a helpful answer. The next question is, what's the hardest milestone you had to surpass throughout public relations? Hardest milestone you had to surpass throughout public relations. I think just PR tends to be invisible. It tends to be obscure to some people. I think really having to figure out how to explain it to people. I've had a lot of business leaders and chief executives kind of whisper to me, hey, I don't know what PR is, but I know we need it, whatever it is. People tell me we need it. I kind of understand. I think I understand. I think I understand how it works, or the value of it, but I'm not sure how it works. And could you guide me? And I think once I adopted this idea of being a champion for our profession, advancing the profession by helping educate others, helping guide others along the way, I think that was a big milestone for me, is just realizing that if I can become the trusted expert advisor, I can help so many people in a much bigger way than just assuming that everybody understands PR. Because honestly, most people, including people in marketing, they really don't understand it. They want to, and they need somebody like me and others to be helpful, trusted advisors and guides to them. So I would say, otherwise, what's the hardest milestone you had to surpass throughout public relations? Yeah, I probably owning and operating an agency through a lot of external forces and headwinds like economic changes and things like that. Yeah, if I think of something else, I'll come back to that. So next question, tell me why you want to give back to the community, because the community is who helps us. The community is all we have. We've got each other, and we need to lift each other up and help each other succeed. And what's good for you is good for me. And so a supportive community, a rising tide floats all boats. And, you give back to the community because studies show also that when you give back to others, you're the one who's actually helped more so. And, I don't know the scientific term for it, but, you're emotionally or otherwise recharged and energized, and you feel good about the giving back, not from a pride standpoint, but just that you helped others and you made a difference. And so, I'm not a big believer in, things that, people say, oh, I pay it forward so it comes back to me and stuff like that. I just think it will come back to you because you did something to help somebody else. And that's all you need in life, is just to help somebody else and just feel good about that and not do it out of expectation of anything else happening to you. But imagine if we were all kinder and more helpful to each other, what a better society and culture we would have. And so I also think people gave back to me to help me. And when I was young in my career, and have continued to help me even to this day, I've got a great network of friends and colleagues and fellow professionals, and we're always trying to help each other. And I just think that's the way to be. I don't like people who are overly competitive and don't think that we can help each other out. I mean, I refer business to people all the time, and they're like, why would you refer business to me? And it's like, it's not a good fit for me, but it's what you do, I think. And if you can't do it, maybe you know somebody else who can help them. Next question. Tell me about your job on a day-to-day basis. So my job on the day-to-day basis, no two jobs are the same, or 2 days are the same. My role is to help lead, and attract, recruit, retain, develop, and lead the most talented public relations, corporate communications professionals I can find. That goes beyond what people think of when they think of PR, is getting media coverage, and maybe controlling media coverage in a crisis situation. And those are two very, very parts and roles of the public relations profession. Those are specific practices of media relations and crisis communication management. But there are other parts of this business like, AI relations and helping people become really good spokespersons and doing good media interviews, helping write content that, people engage with and want to, share and want to promote online. So there's content creation, there's reputation management and building reputations. There's also, just so many other ways. And so like we have a great social media practice. We we rebuilt, we blew up our entire social media department and team early this year and reinvested in new resources and additional resources. And they've been crushing it ever since. And we've been doing some of our best social media work this year. And a lot of people think social media belongs to a digital marketing agency or something like that. But the problem is, I think digital marketing agencies are very focused on lead generation and conversion instead of storytelling and relationship building. So we're thinking more of the long game and building that long-term reputation. And so my job, and I'm going to steal this, a guy named Tony Mikes, who is was like a coach or consultant to agency owners. He told this story, and I've borrowed it and used it hundreds of times, and I really like it. And the story he tells is about Walt Disney. And Walt Disney was allegedly personally giving a tour to students who were touring Disney, and he was taking them through the studio and things like that. So he showed the accountants, the animators, the sound, the Imagineers, the studio set, et cetera, et cetera. And allegedly, when the tour was over, some kid said, "Well, Mr. Disney, this is all interesting, but what do you do exactly? What's your job?" And I don't know how the story goes. Maybe Disney paused for a minute or so, but his quick response was, he said, "Well, I'll tell you what I do is I go around to each department like a bee, and I pollinate it. I go into another department, I spend time there, and I try to make it better and level it up. And when I feel like I've been successful, then I move on to the next department and I do a little bit of that." And that's kind of when I heard that back in 2006-ish. I adopted that and I started doing that in my own agency and in my own company. And I felt like it was my job to help everybody get a little better. And one of our core values we've since adopted is improvement, and with the aspiration of getting 1% better every day. And I want to become a learning organization that gives back. So that's a little bit about my job on a day-to-day basis. This episode is brought to you by Audible. Enjoy 30 days free of Audible Premium Plus by going to ontopofpr.com/audible.
You're listening to On Top of PR with your host, Jason Mudd. Jason is a trusted advisor to some of America's most admired and fastest growing brands. He is the managing partner at Axia Public Relations, a PR agency that guides news, social, and web strategies for national companies. And now, back to the show.
How was it working with these big companies, and did you enjoy it? So that's the next question. So, big companies are interesting because, the pressure is equally high as it is with smaller companies. They typically have deeper pocketbooks. Every company will tell you their budget's small. I don't care who it is. Walmart and Coca-Cola will tell you, and Nike will tell you they have a small budget. But so will obviously the mom and pop dry cleaners and the startup tech companies and the mid-size, staffing firm or family entertainment center. Everybody thinks their budget's small. But yeah, I enjoyed working with big companies. The interesting thing about big companies is they often move pretty darn slow. They're making decisions now for 6 months or more ahead of time. But the work you're doing there is meaningful and important as well. And the work they're doing there is meaningful and important, and it's certainly important to them. And so, big companies can help, pay the bills, and big companies can be, very demanding at times. Their demands are unique than, say, smaller companies who want something done, good, fast, and cheap, where big companies are typically looking for something to be done good and sometimes cheap, but fast is not always the case. Now, there are exceptions, of course, but I've actually thrived pretty well working with big companies. Especially at Axia, we've done a good job of recruiting big names to come work with us. And I personally enjoy it just as much or almost as much as working with an entrepreneurial company. Entrepreneurial companies are a little bit more difficult and demanding, and they typically have smaller budgets and higher expectations. So big companies are wanting to make sure they're protecting their long-term reputation and are always thinking long-term, where small companies are not always thinking long-term. But I would say find out what's best for you. It's not always the size of the company that matters. It's also the industry, the niche, and the profession that it's in, the profession you're in, the culture they've built, your role there, and how well you feel connected to the organization. I wouldn't be afraid to work with big companies. I think they give you a lot of opportunities to do things. I'll give you a story about a colleague of mine named Jonathan. Jonathan worked for us for several years. He was a web guy for us. He would build websites, manage websites, improve websites, optimize websites. And he left us and we were very disappointed. And I asked him, where are you going and why? And he went to go join a retail company, a fashion company. And, he might correct me on this, but the way I understood it, his job today, or at least at the time, was very narrow, extremely narrow. His job was to create the afternoon email blast for a fashion retailer. Yep, that's it. All he did all day long was create or manage an afternoon email that went out. And there was a morning email, there was an afternoon email, there was an evening email, probably another overnight email. I don't know. But his job was to make sure that email went out and made sure it was improving and performing well. And he had a team, of course, a designer and maybe some writers and things like that. But I didn't understand why Jonathan wanted to go work at this company to have such a narrow focus all day long and not get bored. And that's the thing about working in an agency. You might specialize in a particular area like newsletters or websites or whatever it might be, but you're often, depending on the agency, doing it for multiple clients. Now, some agencies have big clients, and so you're only working on one client. You could be that guy inside an agency only doing an afternoon newsletter for a particular company. And that's fine if that's what you want to do. I think figuring out what you want to do is probably the best thing you could do. Tell me about your best experience with one of the companies. So these are great questions or requests, but you just have to keep in mind, I've been doing this for 30 years and working with dozens of clients, maybe in a given year. My job is really to lead and run an optimized PR firm, which means I'm not always doing the client work or the client interactions, but I get to hear about some of the cool stuff and I've experienced some of the cool stuff. So, but probably the best experience with one of the companies, I've named a handful of companies that are kind of highlights as I look back over my years at Axia in my career. And, the best experiences are probably, a conversation that I'll probably not ever forget. And so we think of, let me explain this. So we think of clients in 3 different personality buckets internally at Axia. So, and we've given them kind of persona names. So the first persona is called Busy Blair. And a busy Blair to us is somebody who's focused on how many hours are we getting per week, per month out of Axia. And then how many deliverables is that producing? So they're kind of focused on the details, right? They're kind of micromanaging the agency role. They're busybody and they're very worried about how busy we are, right? And how busy we're working for them. And that's honestly like our least favorite client, our least sophisticated type of clients, right? They want to see hours and activity report. They want to see hours, hourly reports. What hours did we spend and where did we spend them? How do we spend them? What activities did we accomplish? How many media contacts did we reach out to? How many press releases did we send? How many social media posts did we write? That kind of stuff. A very micro view. The next level up, a little bit more expansive, is what we call Results Rory. And Results Rory is somebody who doesn't really care about how much time we spend and how many deliverables we produced. Instead, they want to know, what results did we get? How did this impact the business? So they don't care how many people picked up the news release. They don't care how many people viewed the social media post. They don't care how much web traffic we drove to their website. And they're not wrong. Like, they should be focused on results. And so Results Rory just wants to know, what's the bottom line impact this has on my organization? And that's probably a very sweet spot client for us. But the next level up from that is Trusting Terry. And Trusting Terry is the ideal client. And if you're a client, or you're going to be a client, you aspire to be a client, or you're going to be in client service, you not only want to be the Trusting Terry, but you want your client to be the Trusting Terry. And so my favorite clients, my best experiences, are with companies who look at Axia as a strategic, trusted partner in their relationship. And so what I love to hear, and I've heard this many times, is, I'm not worried about the results because I know you're getting us the results. What it's important to me is that I have access to your team and their insights and intelligence, that they understand who we are, what we do, what we value, and there's alignment in our values, and that there's the integrity of telling us hard things when we need to hear hard things and telling us the right things to do. That was the ultimate compliment. And to be honest, I don't know I deserved the compliment the first time I got that, because I'm not sure I had full alignment with the highest of integrity that, they were perceiving that I had and I was giving them. I had to mature into that because I was very ambitious when I started the company. I was always looking out for advancing not at any cost, but I wasn't thinking big picture long term. And that's just a maturity thing. And I've matured into that. But having an understanding that that's what people are looking for in their PR firm was very insightful and helpful to me early in my career. And so as I've grown as a trusted advisor and I've grown in my commitment to integrity and my demand of high integrity and honesty and always telling the truth, even if it's hard to hear, I think my clients have valued that I have that expectation for me, for my team, and for them. So I hope that was helpful. But yeah, I would say the best experiences with these companies are where we have the best relationship, the best culture alignment, a commitment to mutually shared values, and a mutual respect for each other in the work that we're providing. I do believe that there's no subordinate or inferior relationship. We are peers. Clients invest money in us for our expertise, and we count on our clients to, give us the opportunity to help them. So they're not better than us, and we're not better than them. We are equals in this strategic partnership. And if anybody feels differently about it, it generally doesn't work out. So we try to put all egos aside and get entrenched and help each other and not worry about power plays or anything like that. What made you decide to go into public relations, and did you have any role models when you were starting out? So I answered many of those questions. PRSA would love to tell you about Edward Bernays as being a role model for PR and one of the founding fathers of PR. But I would honestly argue that, he would get canceled in today's culture. And, some of the things he really advocated for, were not necessarily ethical in the way that I think they should be. But, that was a different time and a different season. And, every generation, has kind of black eyes or things they cringe over now. But yeah, as I said earlier, I've had a lot of role models along the way, and I think I've outgrown many of them or learned as much as I could from some of them and kind of moved on. But I've had great people who have mentored and guided me one-to-one or one-to-many. So a lot of authors have written great books that have had a big influence on my life, and they may never know it. I've had the opportunity to interview people on my podcast who have been very influential in my life in that way. And so, yeah, that's, those are definitely people who have helped me. What made you want to do stand-up comedy in your spare time? Okay, somebody's doing a deep dive. That's awesome. So yeah, I did stand-up comedy for a brief time. It was one of the more rewarding experiences in my life or career, because it takes a lot of courage to get up on a stage and try to make people laugh, who generally speaking are there to have a good time, but they're not going to just give it to you. And so, unless you're a cute kid or somebody they're already a fan of, their suspicions are up a little bit. But what made me want to do stand-up comedy in your spare time? Well, first of all, I didn't have a lot of spare time. And that's kind of why I stopped doing it. Was the criteria of the comedy club was a certain amount of performances that they wanted you to be on hand for, every week. And at the time I had young kids and I lived an hour each way without traffic from the comedy club. And so to appease their interest, you had to be there 2 to 3, ideally 4 times a week. And of course, as you know, comedy clubs don't meet during business hours. So it was nighttime, it was weekends, and things like that. And just my family, I felt like needed me more than the stage did. My comedy was a little interesting, meaning that I felt like, people gave me, I think a great compliment was, your comedy's like Dennis Miller. And most of you don't know who that is, but, a little bit of intellectual. I had a lot of business comedy. I had a lot of deeper thinking kind of comedy. And honestly, something that one day I would really like to flex a little bit more of my muscles in and get better at. But stand-up comedy helped me as a speaker. It helped me as a storyteller. And there were great workshops that I was able to attend along that journey. And I met some really great friends and people. that are also comedians. It's also a little bit about, they say in food manufacturing that you don't want to see how the sausage is made. And I will tell you that there were some things about stand-up comedy I wouldn't say that I disliked, but there was a lot of things that made me, disillusioned is not quite the right word, but ultimately I'd see people in comedy and it's not a bad thing. You just assume they're one way, but they're really another. Not a bad way, but they have a stage persona that is not really who they authentically are off stage. And so you think you really know them based on their on stage behavior, but then off stage you start to find out that, some of their stuff isn't true. So I'll give you an example, and I won't name names, but, believe it or not, like there's comedians that make a living talking about, different topics. And so an example might be, a comedian might be well known for telling jokes about family life and being a dad and being, a husband or being married or whatever. And then as you get to know them, you find out they're not married at all. But yet their stage persona would make you think that they're married. I don't know how somebody gets in that spot, but I've seen people in that spot. I've seen the opposite where somebody, just talks about being a single guy and what's that like. And then you find out actually they are married to somebody and have been for several years. And that's just their stick and they just stick with it. So there's a little disenfranchisement that happened there when you kind of see, how the sausage is made and what really goes on in stand-up comedy. But it's kind of the best way I would describe it is they say, don't ever meet your heroes. And so that might be a good example. Tell me about a struggle that PR work has that you've overcome. So PR is a tough profession. I didn't say this already, but it is considered to be one of the top 10 most stressful professions in the United States. And I'll tell you what, we definitely feel that and we have that. I'd say one of the biggest struggles about PR is people don't really understand it. And they often think it's instant and overnight and that, just because they want to be in the Wall Street Journal means that it's going to happen. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but it's all about the approach and how you have to approach it. And again, you have to think of it as a long game. You have to go to them with the right messaging and value. It's just like anything else in life is what's in it for me is not just about you, but what's in it for them and more importantly, what's in it for their audience. So I think that's a big struggle is people don't really understand what PR is and constantly having to educate them and re-educate them about it. Next question, what made you want to start and host a podcast? First of all, I freaking love this podcast. It is so much fun to do this. I love getting connected to new people, interviewing people, learning from them, sharing those learnings with others. If I could just do this full time, I would love it. And I'm hoping to build an audience so we can keep doing that. But what made me start hosting a podcast? Well, first of all, most people don't know, we started a podcast around 2005 or 6. We were one of the first companies I know to start doing it. And that was called the 60-second impact. And so it was like a very short, podcast. I don't think we called it 60-second, but it was based on our written newsletter that we had called 60-Second Impact, which, by the way, we have that still going, and it's very much worth subscribing. But we would just take the topics from that newsletter, and we would turn it into a podcast. And eventually, candidly, we just kind of lost the internal resources to pull that off, so we kind of put it on pause, and then we brought it back. And the reason I brought it back is because I wanted to advance and give back to the profession. I wanted to share what things I know to help others be more successful with PR. I wanted to meet other people and interview other people. And I knew that would differentiate us from other PR firms by us just proactively sharing our smarts and sharing our insights in a global platform. I'm pleased to say that our podcast, I believe, is in the top 2.5%, maybe 3%, but I think we're now at 2.5% of the most popular podcasts. We're very proud of that and very glad to be doing this. So, really it was the nudging of others who said, man, a podcast is a great way to build an audience and a following and yes, attract clients, attract talent and, differentiate ourselves. And it's been all those things and more. And frankly, with, almost a minimal effort, I feel like we could make a lot more effort, like shoemakers' kids and spend more time on ourselves to even improve what we're doing. And I'm looking forward to doing some of that in 2026. Tell me how you got into PR. We've already covered that. Did you always know you wanted to be a public speaker? Tell me about it. You know what? I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you when I was a kid, I was involved in 4-H and I was winning all kinds of red ribbons, which is, I believe is like a first place designation, for public speaking. And I even spoke up, as a kid. I was a skateboarder and I was just tired of getting run off by, police and business owners and landlords and whoever it might be. And there's just nowhere for us to, enjoy skateboarding without, getting bothered by other people who thought we were bothering them. And so I remember I spoke to the city commission where I lived, and I was just pleading with them to give us a designated place to be able to go skateboard, and anywhere interesting to skateboard had signs up that said no skateboarding. And, I was looking for a way to not break the law or break the rules, but also have the ability to participate in a sport that was very rewarding to me, both as a way to express myself artistically as well as a physical outlet. And since then, I've also advocated and actually ended up helping raise the money to build a community skate park, which then produced, an Olympian who ended up competing in the Olympics for skateboarding, and who says it's because of that skate park that they were, one, attracted to skateboarding, and two, they had the ability to practice and get good enough that they were able to compete at the international level, and actually was placed the highest of any female athlete or competitor from the United States in that particular Olympics. So that makes me really proud. So yeah, public speaking, has helped me do a lot of things in life. I just love helping others, and the way to do that is through public speaking. So I don't get as much opportunity to do that in my busy schedule and in my various travels, but it's always something I'm looking to do more of. And but I didn't always know I wanted to be in public speaking, but it just kind of naturally felt or fit into my life and equation. Tell me about your biggest inspiration. I mean, hands down, it's going to be family. It's going to be, my wife and children, my parents, my nephews and nieces, my cousins, my brothers and sisters, both in-laws and not. But, definitely my wife and kids, my Christian faith is very important to me as well. So is my personal health and wellness. And I also get very inspired by the great work that I get to do for great clients and with great colleagues. So I have a lot to be thankful for, a lot to say grace over, and just looking forward to seeing what's next as well. If you could offer advice to our generation on how to achieve success, what would you say? I would say you're going to have to work a lot harder than you think. I say that jokingly, no hate intended there, just kind of a joke. But honestly, if I could offer advice to your generation to achieve success, I'd say work hard, and even work harder than when you're done working hard. You've got your whole life to relax, your whole life to chillax. But right now is a time for you to start making strides and making good first impressions and differentiating yourself from everyone else by putting in the work that other people aren't willing to do. That'll set you apart from everybody else and set you up for success long term. So even though it might be hard now would be the time, I think, to put in the effort. Because once you start having a spouse and children and a mortgage and a desire to have a life outside of work, it'll be harder to kind of rebuild that from later. How do you get people who are reluctant to talk to you to open up? That's a good question. I think just asking them questions about themselves at a slow pace, not trying to make them feel pressured. I think being vulnerable, being real, being authentic, asking them questions about themselves, just trying to get to know them better and make them feel more comfortable, probably revealing maybe things about yourself that might be embarrassing without, being obnoxiously an oversharer. I think those are all good ways to get started. But go slow, start slow, in your approach. It's kind of like deer, right? Deer get scared off very easily. So you don't want to rush up to them. You just want to build trust with them, maybe put out some food, maybe let them come closer to you slowly, but you don't approach them. And as they start to feel comfortable, then they'll start coming up close to you. I'm not saying that's what you should do in real life, but that's a really good example that I've heard people say. Tell us what makes FBHS a special place. So it's been a long time since I was in high school. And, I think high school is hard for everybody, whether you're, what we called back then, and I'm sure it's not appropriate now, but, jocks and geeks and things like that. But at the end of the day, what makes Fernandina Beach High School a special place? I'd say the community that we're in, that it's in. The unique opportunities that I had there. At the end of the day, it's still a small town, and there's a lot of synergy and centralization and support around Fernandina Beach High School. So, I think that's what makes it a special place. Of course, having the right culture and lifestyle that we enjoy here in Fernandina Beach, and having the right teachers who want to see you succeed, and having great a great public school system. I think that all fits the bill. My son, went to that high school, and when I went to open house, I found myself sitting in the same seats. The same seats he was sitting in were the same seats that I sat in so many years before. And so that was very memorable for me. The last question of the 27 questions that I received from these students, and I just want to say thank you for listening, and thank you to the students for submitting their questions. And I also want to say that it is really important that you know that you can go to axiapr.com/AMA, as in Ask Me Anything, and you can ask us questions anytime there that you would like to ask. And we will make an effort to answer your question either here on Top of PR, in our PR Hack of the Week, in our different videos we produce. I do some various social media videos. We also do a lot of blogging, and so there's many ways we might answer it. But we would definitely love if you would submit questions. We're happy to answer them, and again, give back and advance the profession. That's axiapr.com/AMA. And you might even be able to get there from ontopofpr.com/AMA. I'm honestly not super positive about that. All right, last question. What was the best classes you took in college? Good question. The best classes I took in college were probably the ones that I was challenged the most and learned the most. So off the top of my head, I think it was called J105, Journalism 105. That number doesn't exist anymore, but I'm sure the class does. We had a professor. His name was Ken Ike. I don't believe he's with us anymore. He was tough. He was very robotic in his personality. He had very high standards and expectations. He did everything with intention. He was very strict, very serious, very high expectations. And I'm just going to be very transparent with you. One of the first assignments I did for Ken Ike's class, this was an entry-level journalism class. I don't know if it was a weed-out class, but he sure treated it like it was. And so I'm in his class. I turn in my first assignment. He gave me a D. And the reason he gave me a D is he was reading through an article that I had written for the class. And kind of the rule of thumb back then with some professors is I will start reviewing your work until something happens in your work to disqualify you. And then you'll only get the points that you earned for that assignment that you've earned up to that moment when I stopped reviewing the work. So something had to happen to disqualify the work, right? Maybe it was plagiarism, maybe it was a typo, whatever it was, a factual error, and they would just stop reviewing the work, and whatever points you earned to that moment is what you got. In this case, I had a typo in a company name. So I spelled Walmart, and for the record, Walmart spells their name different today than they did back then. But that back then it was Wal-Mart, and I believe it was a capital W and a capital M. But I lowercase the M, and so it was Walmart with a capital W, a dash between the L and the M I believe was supposed to be capitalized, and I lowercased it. And he gave me a D and did not get very far into my assignment at all. I don't even remember what the topic or the news story that I wrote was for the class. But boy, that fired me up. I mean, I didn't know what to do with a D in a field that I had more experience than any of my colleagues had. And so I said to myself, challenge accepted. And I decided I was going to turn this thing around. I knew exactly his standard, message received of what he was looking for. And I went at it full force, hardcore, and I was not going to get another D in that class again. There's a lot of pride there. At the end of the day, I came to the journalism school. It was my portfolio that got me in, not my grades. In fact, it probably required a little bit of persuasion to get a C student, maybe a C plus student into the University of Missouri. First of all, second of all, to get into the School of Journalism. But I had a clip book that nobody else had. I had a portfolio that nobody else had at 18 years old, having written for a Florida's oldest weekly newspaper and working working for a daily newspaper in a major metropolitan area and having a lot of clips to show for it. One of my editors there at the Florida Times-Union, Roger Bull, he told me that I definitely wasn't his best writer, but I would write more articles per week than anybody else that wrote for him. And for that, he was grateful because I could help him fill a lot of content. That was somewhat of a compliment. But I think that kind of speaks to me and my style. I'm highly productive, highly efficient. And I do my best to do first class work, but I may not be in that particular stage in life. I might not have been the best writer, but I was willing to work hard and put in the work and get the reps in to build my reputation and my career and my experience and my portfolio. So Ken Ike's class was tough. I got a D on that first, one of the first assignments. I worked really hard, played his game, understood it, appreciated it. I could turn on the perfectionist mode with the best of them. And I did. And my point in telling you this probably way too long story is this, that it's almost like a movie. I walk out of class one day and there's 2, maybe 3 students waiting for me in the hallway. And they said, "Are you Jason Mudd?" And I said, "Yes," and I'm wondering what's going on, thinking they're there to beat me up or something for some reason. And they were mad. They wanted to know who I was and what I was doing. Well, come to find out, apparently they had heard, and I didn't even know this, that I was getting an A in the class. And they said, "We hear you're getting an A in Ken Ike's, J105 class." And I said, "Yeah, I hope so. I expect that, but I don't know that for sure." And they're like, "Well, we heard you are." I don't know how they heard. I don't know why they cared. But literally they were ganging up on me and they wanted to know how I was getting an A in his class. And that no one gets an A in his class and that they want to know what my secret is. And that was a moment of joy for me and, excitement that my hard work was paying off. And so I just explained to them what I already explained to you. I'm not going to repeat it. But they just weren't up for the task. I think these were students who didn't know what it was like to not get an A, but didn't understand that it was more than just academics and studies, that it had to be application and the ability to, write with perfectionism in mind and write with journalism in mind. And they just haven't, my guess is they hadn't learned how to do that. So I was thrilled that I was able to take one of the hardest classes, one of the hardest instructors class, and turn that around from a first grade as a D to getting an A in that class. So that is definitely one of the best classes I took in college. The other class that I took in college that was pretty darn good was, and I don't remember the name, but I think it's something, the title of the class was about graphics and graphic design. And so my instructor was Birgit Wasmuth. She was German. She had a reputation, and she was not an easy class to pass. Many people did not get their degree in journalism and pivot into another career or even dropped out, Brad Pitt included, because this class was so difficult. Brad Pitt and others were, he was about to fail it, the story goes, for the second time, and decided that he just couldn't put up with it anymore. So he packed his stuff and moved to Los Angeles, which worked out great for him. But knowing that story, when I got there, because he was a recent student of that class, I knew I needed to prepare. Now, the good news is being a production assistant at the Fernandina Beach News Leader prepared me for that moment. I had already learned how to use what was the premier desktop publishing software at the time, Quark Express. I believe InDesign is the one that's current now. But at the time, Quark Express was the first class version. I knew how to use that already, almost inside and out. But I decided that I would spend the summer preparing for that class that I was going to take in the fall to get even sharper at it. So I worked, I did workshops, and I bought, back then you bought these, they're called visual quick start guides that taught you how to use software. So I just kept working and improving my skill that I already had at a basic level, because I could not afford to fail that class. I was paying my way through school. It's very expensive. And I knew the reputation this class had. So I worked really hard, and the first lab we had, so we had, I think it was like an hour and a half or so, maybe. It was an hour and a half twice a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays. We had lecture, and she would go through the elements of design and teach you about graphic design, and specifically graphic design for journalism, including advertising and a little bit of, mostly advertising, but a little bit of newspaper magazine layouts. So I go to my first lab. I had great TA, Jennifer. And in that, they gave out an assignment, and the people in the class are really getting heartbroken because they're realizing how hard it is to learn how to do this for the very first time. I'm sure now it's easier, a little bit more intuitive, and a better user experience and user design interface. But back then it was, you had to learn it. You had to do the work, had to put in the reps, had to do the work. So I go to the first lab, and they hand out the assignment, and, I don't know how long it took, but the lab was at least an hour, maybe an hour and a half, as I recall. That was in addition to the lecture. And so I go in there, I set up, I get the assignment. I complete the assignment probably way faster than most people did because they were just learning how to do it. Showed it to the TA, Jennifer. She said, "Look great." And I walked out, and you could hear people grumbling and like, "Oh, it's unfair. Why is he done already?" or whatever. And then they say, "Oh, it's unfair that he, already knows how to use this." And what they didn't understand is, again, like the advice I gave earlier, put in the reps, do the work hard now, and you'll be able to build a stronger foundation and a quicker fast track of your career. And that's what I did. And it worked out as a happy accident for me. But it wasn't all roses. There was a point in that class. I'll just tell this story that Professor Wasmuth gave out an assignment before spring break. It was a doozy. It was a complicated assignment. And I looked at it and I said, I'm not going to have time to do this next week with my other requirements of working. I worked my way through school. I had other assignments and other obligations, other exams, other projects due for other classes. So I just kind of looked at my board where I had all of my projects listed and on a calendar. And I saw, okay, I'm going to have to work on this on spring break. Did I want to do that? Absolutely not. But I had to do it. So I took the assignment she gave us before spring break that was due, I think, the Friday after spring break or something like that. And I worked on it. I worked on it in Quark Express. I built it out to the specifications. We had a 3-page brief, as I recall, and did all the work and everything, had it done before spring break was over. We come to class on that Monday after spring break. She hands out the assignment again to everybody. It's due by Friday. Everybody's, not freaking out, but they're kind of dreading how hard this assignment was. And I was feeling pretty good, a little pat on the back, feeling accomplished that my work was already done and I had it done already and I didn't have to worry about it. So Friday comes, I turn it in, and, a week or so later, we get back our grade. And just like the other example I gave, she gave me, I think, an F. And so as she went through the project along the spec sheet, I'd earned a certain number of points out of the 100 possible points. I think it was, as I remember, and I can't believe I still remember this so many years later, I think I got a 60. Might have been a 50, but I'm pretty sure I got a 60. So I had earned 60 points according to the checklist that she gave and how she was grading the assignment. But once she saw a mistake, she stopped grading. And the mistake was that my margins that I set for the assignment were off by, just a fraction of an inch or whatever, but it was wrong. And you know what? If it was wrong, then that's the grade I deserved. But this was like a kind of like a midterm project or a significant project, one of 3 projects, maybe one of 5 that our grades were extremely dependent upon. So I told her, I said, look, there's no way this is wrong. I followed the instructions to a T. I'm always getting good grades on your projects. What did we do here? What happened? So she and I went through, I think I caught her in office hours. And by the way, office hours are a great way to build a relationship with your professor and show up and show out that you're interested and build a relationship with them, especially when you're in a class with 100 people. It'll help you in the long run have that relationship. That relationship would be beneficial for you in the long haul. And so I went to office hours and I was not taking no for an answer. And I wanted to find out why, what happened, what went wrong. Here's what went wrong. She somehow, unintentionally or not, I'm not sure what happened. The specs, the brief that she gave us before spring break was different than the one she gave us after spring break. So the case I made was you did not tell us that the brief changed. You passed it out as if it was the same brief. And if you compare it to the brief I have right here, it's 100% accurate. Now, she's not one to concede, and I don't remember all the details, but I got my way with her eventually. But it took a lot of, gumption and a lot of stubbornness right back at her stubbornness. And, meanwhile, there are people in the hallway in tears, people who are trying to get her fired, people who are very upset. And, she had a reputation for being hard, so everybody knew that going into it. But she was the only professor that taught that class, and depending on the sequence or track you were on, you had to take that class. So anyway, long story short, I got a lot of respect from her for the work ethic I had, the willingness to stand up for myself and be persuasive. So much so that when she stopped teaching at the University of Missouri, she contacted me when she was at the University of Florida and asked me to come speak to her class. I was literally months, if not maybe a year, after graduating from the Missouri School of Journalism, and here I am being asked to come speak to students, which just kind of blew me away, and might go back to the question that somebody asked earlier, which is, how did I end up in public speaking? So just getting asked to speak, and you just start doing it, and you realize that people like what you have to say, and you can say interesting things, or maybe things that people don't know about, and share them in a way that hopefully is memorable. So anyway, that was my experience. Those are probably the two of the best classes I took in college because they kicked my butt and made me grow up a lot and make me a better journalist, a better technician, and understanding expectations and what quality means when you're doing work. So anyway, look, this was a great episode. Thank you for the opportunity to share so much about me and my journey and experience. I hope this was helpful to you. I hope I've helped you stay on top of PR, and I hope that you will either leave us a 5-star review on the platform of your choice where you watch this, or better yet, just refer a friend to this episode who you think would benefit from watching it. And with that, this is Jason Mudd signing off from Axia Public Relations. I hope something great happens to you today.
This has been On Top of PR with Jason Mudd, presented by ReviewMaxer. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and check out past shows at ontopofpr.com.